to Stream 58 in this series where I'm programming an NES game live on Twitch from scratch. Although, once again today, I am working mostly on the asset tool. And I'm working mostly on the asset tool because we needed to make some changes about the way that we were treating the project, essentially, for how the levels are loaded. And basically the way that I had written the asset tool originally, it was loading all of the files in a path and kind of handling them just by them being there, and that was good enough for getting started, but it didn't really have the right feel of being organized well, especially given that we are using these tiled maps now to actually build the specific levels. And so the idea was to change how we're managing our files based around the level itself, right? There are going to be certain things about the game that are going to be mostly constant, I would say. So the ship is going to be mostly the same. I'm not sure about. I mean, I don't even, because we're still so early into the development of this. I'm not even sure what all of the constants are going to be. But the levels themselves may have different tile sets and palettes and enemies and whatnot. And so it seemed reasonable to organize the assets around the level so that we can manage the assets that way and export them that way. And so then the asset tool becomes more of a way of essentially reviewing and exporting the data from a single location, not so much a content creation tool per se, which is what I felt like it was kind of turning into. So last time we left, it was kind of not working because of a few problems, but in between the last stream and this one, I did work on this a little bit separately, so now at least it's loading the PNG files again, which it was doing previously, and so now we're at a point where we should be able to create our sprites and meta tiles from this, but obviously creating the meta tile doesn't really do anything. Oh, well, this is not a actual meta tile, so creating that meta tile doesn't really do anything because right now the way it's working is we've got the map here, but the tool is just dumping the content into a folder. Let's see, so is that the one that I just no, so that's the so that's this tile set. And interestingly, I didn't think about this, but we also have some other materials that are not included in this, which are things like the explosion content, the explosion animation file. So, oh, I see. So it actually still generated the full export to some extent, but not maybe not everything that we needed. I'm just kind of not 100% sure what the right thing to do is, because now that I'm looking at this, okay, we've got these files here that were loaded based on what's in the level, but we've got stuff that's not associated to the level that needs to be managed as well. I suppose I could bring it into the level by including it as a tile set in tiled, so that they're available here. I'm not sure I want to do that, though. I'm trying to think of what's going to be the most efficient way to manage this. I mean, I like using the map file as kind of the organizational unit around the game content, so that we're not just dumping everything into one big folder. And then we have the ability to do the map in an assets folder where you have your tile sets and your PNGs organized that way. I mean, you could even further break it down by level. There's nothing stopping us from doing that, other than I just didn't do that right now. But as it is, with what I've done, it would be able to load that with no problem and find the files. So I guess the issue is now there are assets that aren't directly tied to the map that need to be included in this list, but are not. And the question is, does it make sense to tie it to the level? And I feel like the answer is no. And I say no because the problem with tying it to the level is then we have to bring it into every level, which, I mean, in and of itself isn't a big deal, but it's production overhead in terms of, if you want to crank out a bunch of levels, you don't need to you don't want to have to do that every time. And so I'm just wondering if we have some sort of way of, instead of directly calling this map file, maybe we have some sort of manifest file that just kind of lists out our map. And right now it would just have the one map that we would use, and it could have multiple that you could switch between. And then it would also have a list of other assets that are not tied directly to a map. So like the explosion animation and the player sprite. Yeah, I think that might be okay. And for now, because we don't have any sort of drop-down control, instead of working on making that, I will just simply I'll forego the drop-down control work and kind of make it so that we have the we'll just load map 1 by default, and then from there also pull in the other assets. I'm gonna also make this a shorter stream. Just want to kind of cover what I'm doing here in the tool, and then keep working on it. And it seems like this is less interesting to people who are working on their game or interested in working on an NES game, even though content production is a pretty big part of making any game. Actually, while we're talking about that, I just watched today, it was suggested by someone, I'm just pulling up my watch history here so I can show you guys. I did watch this video that someone made, which was really good because it's pretty appropriate especially if you're making a game for the first time. So 5 bad genres for your first game. And it's actually a really good video just in general, not because of the specific 5 genres that are listed, but because of some of the things that he talks about in terms of he makes this really funny statement about how, you know, you do some coding and you have this idea, and then content happens, which is a great way of kind of explaining what a lot of people think about when they're making a game. You know, they just think that, like, they'll build this mechanic or this engine and then suddenly they'll have this amazing game, especially if you're planning on building something like an RPG or you know, some sort of platforming game. It's like, that's not how that works. It just it doesn't just happen. You have to build a lot of stuff, and so that's part of what I'm trying to focus on with the asset tool, is how can we build stuff quickly, and part of that is making sure things are organized. So while I get that it's not as exciting as 6502 and actual NES coding, it's still extremely important. So I think what I want to do is I want to just going to create a text document just for the sake of it being simple. I'll just call it shooter text, and it will, it's just going to be a really straightforward, simple format, because I don't know that we're going to need anything super complicated. So we'll just say level and then, you know, map1.json. So that's how that's our type. We can put comments here. So type file right. And then the additional thing that we want to include is we'll say image explode.png. This is going to be under assets. Bullet.png. You know, maybe what we can do do something like that, right? Where if it doesn't exist as a sprite, it will pull the file and turn it into a sprite, and then we can manipulate the sprite file as we were before. I think that is all we need for now, because the rest of the information about the content will actually be in the .meta tile file or the .sprite file or whatever file we're working with. So, all right, so let's do this. In here, we're going to do a slight change. We're going to call this project file name. One of my favorite features of the new Visual Studio, or relatively new features, I guess, I don't know, but being able to rename variables like that intelligently is so much better. All right, so that's project file name, and so then what we want is we want something called, although I don't actually need it here for that, so we still need both of these. I don't know why I renamed the first one. So that's this, and oops, that's not what I want to do. Project file equals no. And then open text file. I don't remember if this is initialized yet. No, it's not. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll move this down after the system calls get initialized. So we've got that. And some basic error checking here. Change this to open the text file. Oops. All right, so if that opens up, we'll say read text. Project file. How come I didn't do this in the same way as the binary stuff? I don't know. That's a good question. I guess because I wasn't thinking about it at the time. So read text. Oh, I see. Because I didn't do. I want to do read all text. Text file handle, buffer, max size bytes. So same thing as with this, we basically call it and it will tell us how many bytes it returned, or if it fails it will return false and tell us how many bytes it needs to read everything. Read all, so we can kind of steal this, read all text, text file handle, and then I think it's fseek, right? Fseek. So if the file size is bigger than that, yep. Otherwise, we'll do fread, or is it f? Yeah, fprint, yeah, fread handle buffer file size. The problem, void pointer buffer. Oh, the order is different size handle. Element count. Oh, so one of file size, and then okay. So read all text now. We say read text. Did I not add it to this? Nope. read all text. Read all text, and then where do we initialize that here? So read text, read all. Read all text, read all text. Read all text handle, buffer, max size, text file handle, char buffer, UN32 pointer. Read all text. Text file handle. Oh, I don't know what. It should be char buffer. Okay. All right. So project file. We'll do what we're doing elsewhere. We will say we'll read all into null with file size like this, or project file size like that, and that's UN32. Project file size is 0. What's the problem? Oh, read all text. Read all text. And then we're going to allocate project file equals malloc size of character times project file size, memset project file, oh, I can't call it that, project file content. How about that? Project file content 0 size of char times project file size. That should be a character pointer. Okay. And then we do our call to system hooks.read all text project file. No. No, not no. Project file content. Project file size. Done. So system hooks close text file close text file handle. Oh right, it wants the pointer of that because it's going to null it out. All right, so great. So that should read the whole content of the file now. It did not. Why is the project file size wrong? fseek. Size. Handle is null. That's no good. Why project file equals null? Go to definition. So it's not. text file with options. So this is the first time we're using the text file code, so it's not super surprising that there are some issues with it. Let's fix those problems. So the file handle is null. File name is that text file. Options append. All right, so why is it? I guess I want read and append, not just append. I don't remember if it works that way or not. We'll see in a second. It's been a while since I've used those calls for fopen. Yeah, I didn't think so. Valid file mode. Let's take a look here. I want to be able to open the file for read and write essentially. So R and W, A is append, open for writing. All right, so do I just want do I just want this? WR opens MP file, opens for both read and writing. The file must be, so actually it's just R plus. Well, what's the difference between WR? Did I make that up just now? I thought I saw in an example that they had WRW. All right, well, it says here R plus, so let's use R plus. Let's see if that allows it to open properly. All right, so now it's not getting the file size correctly. When the R plus access is specified both reading and writing aloud, the file is said to be open for update. However, when you switch from reading to writing, the input operation must encounter an end of file marker. If there's no end of file, you must use an intervening call to file positioning function. The file positioning functions are fsetPos, fseek, and and rewind. When you switch from writing to reading, you must use an intervening call to either fflush or file positioning. Okay. So let's see. Thought this worked in the same way. Oh, do you have to do tell? And you can't just use yeah, okay, that's why you've got to use, I forgot. All right, so the way fseek works is differently than lseek, and I forgot because it's been a while. So fseek returns that it successfully seeked to the location, and then you do an ftell on the stream for it to tell you where it is. which will be at the end of the file based on this, and then we'll have our length of the file, and then, yeah. There we go. 119 bytes. Alright, so we've got our project file size. We're going to allocate the memory for it and mem set it out, and then read all of the text. There we go. Now we actually have some text. Great. Now we close the file. Alright, so now that we've got our project content loaded, let's process it. So right now, I guess all we really need to do is get the map file name and yeah, let's start with the map file name. So load project content, map file name, and I don't remember. Okay, yeah, so I'm using one thing I didn't do is, so I had added some code in here, else if string compare token. It adds some code in here to do some traversing of file system paths, and I added the ... relative path. I did not do the single dot for the current folder. So, all right. So trying to think of what's the best way to parse this. So just parse it in kind of let me think about that. I'm debating if I want to do it in a single line or a line by line fashion, or just as a stream of tokens. The advantage of doing it as a stream of tokens is we only have to pull it apart once based on white space characters, and if we do it based on new lines, we have to first pull it apart based on a new line and then pull it apart based on white space characters in order to be able to do something like recognize the comments at the beginning of the line with the semicolon. We could treat. All right, so let's just try and do it as a stream of tokens. Token, well, we'll do that in a second. Context equals null. And I don't want to modify the project buffer, which string tokenize will do, because it inserts some null pointers to do the splitting of the tokens up. I mean, realistically, unless we plan on calling this load project multiple times, doing the free doesn't even really matter. It's just trying to maintain the habit of doing it properly, so that if we were to use it more extensively down the road, we don't leak memory. Alright, so string copy s to buffer. Project content size, project content size, so that copies the buffer over, and then we're going to do char token equals string token s, buffer delimiter is space, and the context is this context variable. And while token is not equal to null, meaning there are still tokens, we want to continue to iterate over this. And put that into there. All right, so if token, let's see, token 0 doesn't equal, so the first thing I want to do is I want to check to see if the token is a new line. You know what, let's do string compare. If it's that, then comment equals false, because the comment only lasts for a single line. If it's a semicolon, then comment equals true. So here, if we get to this point and we're still, and comment is still true, then we're going to skip the next token because these are comments. If string compare token level equals 0, then string copy map file name token, and we actually want to do token equals string tokenize null space context media size I didn't capitalize the N. All right, so that's that. Char pointer, blah. All right, so project file size, and then map file name is a max file folder name, and oh, I didn't return anything here. Now, realistically, once I get the other parts done, we want to return an error if it's an unknown token. But I just want to make sure that we actually get a project file name here, the map file name when we run this could not load project file. Probably the new line there. Therefore, all right. So we don't need this breakpoint anymore. So let's step through. Let's go into this and see what it's gonna do. All right, so. We have our buffer. We're going to copy the project content into the buffer. We're going to call string tokenize on buffer now. And so it's going to look, is it a new line? No. Is it a comment? Semicolon, yes. So turn comment on. Get the next token, which is part of the comment. So continue on. If it's not a new line still, then continue on. Oh, damn it. I don't want to continue. I just want to go to the next part. Do nothing because this text is part of a comment. All right. Oh. Oops. Let's try again. All right, so we got our comment, and now we're just getting. Oh, so it's treating. Token. Oh, it's because there is no space between. Right. It's because there's no space here to break up the new line and this token. So the new line. All right. So what we'll do. It's not that big a deal. If token string length of token -1. Basically, we're just looking for the new line at the end here. Then we're done with the comment. So the token is file. Oh, crap. Damn it, that's not going to work either because it isn't at the end. It streamed it all together. That was dumb. How would you... I mean, splitting it up into individual tokens isn't a big deal. You just add that and it'll know to split it, but then there's no good way to detect if the line is done. Let me do this instead. I thought this was a better idea, but if we get this, then instead of doing the string token at the end, let's do this where we say let's get everything and let's tokenize on the new line because we want to get everything coming up past the new line, and then forget about this comment variable because it's nonsensical now, and All right, so basically if we get a token that's a semicolon, then get the next, oh, this should be token, get the next token based on the new line delimiter, which would give us the rest of the line, and then we'd go back and check to see if it matched anything here, which it wouldn't, so then it would grab the next token based on the space. I think that'll work. So let's see. I'm pretty sure that's right. So that's our first token is the semicolon, and now our next token is the rest of the line, and then we are back to, yeah, that was the level token, and then that gives us the file name. Okay, so the only thing I messed up here is that we want to use space and new line as our delimiter because we don't want to wrap the tokens to the next line. All right. So that gives us this, and then we get our next token, which is level, which is what we want, and we're going to get the next token, which is the, I forgot to add it here. Let me do this. It's const char pointer delimiters equals space /n. I don't know why I'm manually placing it everywhere instead of doing this. That way, if I have to change it again. All right. All right. Now it should be good. We got the rest of the line. So now we have that token, and we get the map1.json, which we put into the map. Yep, and then we get the next token, which is sprite, which we're not doing anything with, so we're just gonna keep iterating through the tokens, which is fine. And then it would load the map, maybe. What's the problem? Buffer is too small. Retry to debug. Current working path. Well, yeah, that's no good. Call stack. Load map. Full path. Current working path is that, which is garbage. Did I get rid of the call to current working path? I guess I did. Or to get the current working path. Oh, because it's using map file name and not project file name. All right. I don't need to do that. I just want to check now that that loads. And it looked like it did. Okay, we're back in business there. Albeit a very small window. Okay. So now that's loading that properly, and we need to handle the sprite files that are not specific to the level. So let's see here. When we load the project, we get the map file name. We are going to get, well, we have this array of current file system items. The file system item is what? It's just the name and the path. It's a directory, full path. Okay. And the size. I'm just kind of debating if we want to use that or we just want to populate another list. Let's just populate another list. But you know, we can use those. This current file list being I guess populated by the initialization still. So let's create a new one called project files, and we'll allocate sufficient size to handle a bunch of stuff. Well, that's too many things. That's too few. I think this is like 100. Okay, great. And for this, because it's being allocated in main and used throughout the whole thing, I don't care if it gets freed, because it'll get freed when we exit the program. No point in writing any sort of cleanup code for that. So let's load the project, and we're going to get the map file name, and then the project files, and this is the max metatiles is the count of that. Let's go to load project. It will get a file system item pointer, file system, project files, and then even 32 max project files. All right, so now we need to add token sprite equals 0, token equals string token, s null, delimiters, context, string copy s. So it's going to get our file name here. We got to copy it out of the token because we need to potentially be able to do some stuff on it. Max file folder name token. All right, so we've copied that, and now it's potentially going to be a relative path. So let's get the absolute path. Get absolute path. Temp file name. Max file folder name and current working path and temp file name. So we need to be able to pass the current working path. Also project content size. Let's do it right here. Character const pointer current working path. So that will give us an absolute path to the file and put it into temp. And then project file count equals 0. Project file count full path equal, I guess we could do all that in here, can't we? Instead of introducing a new variable. And then get absolute, actually, just for the sake of making me feel less twitchy about this because of all the dereferencing and whatnot. We'll just alias this to a character pointer. So we have the absolute path. What else do we have? We have the name. Get file name. Is that it? Max file folder name. And then that's the full path. It'll just get the name of the file, and then I don't really care about the file size right now. What other is directory false? Might as well just set that up here. Okay, so that's that, and then plus project file count. Load project does not take, no it doesn't, it now takes one more. Current working path, great. So that should, UN32, load project, constcar, right, UN32 is incompatible with, what's the problem? Did it, oh, it messed up when it did the, it eliminated one of my parameters. Alright, so let's take a look at the project files array when we get out of here and see what we got. We have explode PNG project files 0 1 let's see 2 3. That's empty. Explode bullet and player. That's correct, and that has incorrect. Well, is it incorrect or did I? Assets. Oh yeah, it's PNG. I actually made a mistake. Should probably do some sort of validation checking on these file paths, but that's okay. Let's just add that to the long list of to-dos. And then the other thing is I want to make this a pointer, just like with some of the other ones that we have where we can actually set max file name, max project files. Let's make it equal to the project file count. If project file count is greater than max project files, return false. Yeah, and then right here we will say project file count UN32 equals max meta tiles. So it will use that for two purposes. It will use that for first determining if we have run out of spots in project files, and then it will also tell us how many files we've loaded. So loaded project files. We don't really need that, but I just figured we can have it print that out just to confirm. Okay, so we've got our project files loaded, or at least the list of them. Let's see, the paths should be correct. So if I go to the full path, in theory that should yep, that loads up the PNG, so that's good. The only other thing that is not so good about this is it is not telling us what kind of file it is. So let's do this. Let's what did I say it was? File system item. Let's make a structure that holds the file system item as well as a type for it, so that we can know what to look for. So type def struct project file. Project file type, the type, and then file system item, and then this is a project file. And yeah, I know that enum does not exist, so let's create that in type. Was it type def enum project file type, and then it's sprite meta tile, and I guess that's it for now. So let's see here. So this should be a project file now, which is going to break things, but that's okay. I know. This is all broken. Project file should be this, and this, and this, and what is the problem? Okay, that's fine now. What don't you like about this? Let's save meta tile. Is it my enum? That's no good. Not a type def. Type def struct. Declaration is incompatible with save. What didn't it like about this declaration? Project file T. What did I mess up? Type def enum, right? Type def enum. Declaration is incompatible with error type. Save. Oh. Project. It's because I have something called a sprite as a type already, and that is no good. That won't work. All right. So now. Item is actually a crappy name for this. Let's call it file. Yep. Stop. it's still broken. File get name, item, no, just change that. File name is file blah. Get rid of my search here. Okay, so load project, and then the only other thing we're not doing is project. I should probably do it before we exit out here. Project files, project file count, type, capital I, that's no good, equals sprite, right? Okay. So now this will say, yep, it's a sprite. Okay, great. So now we know what it is. So now we know what we can look for in terms of if there should be a .sprite file. And if there isn't, we can generate it and add it to the list of things that we're going to display in the list here in the asset tool. I'm going to wrap it up for the evening. I know this is shorter than usual, but again, I feel like the asset tool is something that people are kind of less interested in, and I didn't want to skip a stream, even though I had delayed it already, and I just kind of wanted to walk through this, and I think this is going to be a better structure. I think having the levels laid out like this and some additional ability to define sprites in a text file that kind of binds all of these things together, and then the maps themselves determining which meta tiles get pulled in is a good way of kind of wrangling all of this stuff, because it kind of adds a full structure to everything. This sort of organizational file is really, really super simple, and hopefully will stay that way. The idea is just to kind of wrap everything that needs to be there for the level, or multiple levels to come in, and that will then add to the list of items that are in the asset tool that will it will automatically know how to export these things if they are not already exported. We don't want to do that if it's already it's already there, because we don't want to overwrite it. I'll keep working on that. I'll work on that this weekend, so that hopefully by Monday we'll have that all working again, and we can start looking at some more of the game's play mechanics, and making this a little bit more interesting, and that more so than just working on the asset tool, doing more of the 6502 stuff. Hopefully I'll have some news on what's going on with the artwork. I've been talking to someone about that, and he's pretty excited about the project and has done some really good sprite artwork, so I'm excited to see what he can do. Hopefully we can replace my terrible sprite artwork with some good stuff, and yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But until next time, as always, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Clearvis, or comment on the recording on YouTube, or come talk to people at the Nintendo Age Discord, because a lot of knowledgeable people there. What was I going to say? Oh, the other thing, the Zero Pages series, the next episode of that, I have started working on it, and they just are extremely time consuming, and things with work and just life in general have been extremely busy, so I haven't really had a whole lot of time to get to that, and I will put together another episode of that hopefully soon, in the next several weeks, and post that there. And like I said, that'll be on assembly language programming at a high level, not specifically leveraging the assembly to do NES programming, but explaining how assembly assembly language programming works, because I think, again, it's one of those things where it's intimidating if you've never done it or seen it, compared to things like C or Python or whatever. But it's really not. I mean, in a certain sense, the assembly code is actually very very clear cut and simple compared to some of the higher level languages. It's just that it takes so many more steps to do anything in the assembly code, that it really makes it difficult to understand at times. And then also it's accessing things at such a low level, hardware wise, that it also becomes intimidating. So the goal of the Zero Pages episode 3 will be to explain kind of how that all fits together and why, from an assembly language perspective. And then with doing that, hopefully then people will feel more comfortable coming into what would, I guess, be episode 4 of the episode, where we would be talking about actually starting at the very, very beginning of NES programming, versus what we're doing here, where we've already kind of progressed past that, and we, are working on the game engine as well as the tools and stuff like that. This will start sort of back at the beginning at a much slower pace, in sort of more bite-sized chunks. And so I'll cover different pieces of the NES architecture, starting from probably, I'm not sure, starting from maybe background colors or palettes or something visual, so that it makes it clear that you've done it right. If you have any suggestions, let me know what area to start on besides just the raw assembly language stuff. But anyway, thanks for watching. Sorry that the last couple of streams have been the asset tool. Again, I know I keep saying this, but I feel like people are not as interested in this as they are with the 6502 stuff, but we'll get back into it. It's just part of the workflow. And I'll link to that video that I mentioned earlier on about the 5 genres you shouldn't write a game for, or write your first game for. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's a cool video. I think it's good to watch, and explains why we are at the position we're at, versus just kind of fully diving down into 6502 NES land and doing nothing but that. So anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. See you Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, and reach out to me. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you next time. See ya.